So it's my great pleasure to welcome Beau Carnes as the first guest on what will, for the time being anyway, be known as the Lucid Programming Podcast. And I know that's a horrible name, so if anyone has any catchier names, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section of this video. So Beau is a software developer and a teacher who's produced a prolific amount of programming tutorial videos with a heavy emphasis on JavaScript. He's produced a complete course entitled Grokking Algorithms, which is based on a book of the same name by author Adit Bhargava, and I apologize if I'm butchering the pronunciation of that name.
That's close enough.
Close enough, yeah, sorry about that. He's currently working on a new video course, Grokking Deep Learning, which is based on a book of the same name as well by author Andrew W. Trask. And currently, Beau is working full-time with Freecodecamp, and that's a website that provides free resources on subjects like Node.js, JavaScript, React, HTML5, and more. So if any of those subjects sound intriguing to you, I encourage you to check out their website at freecodecamp.org or their corresponding YouTube page. And I'm sure we'll get to talk more about that in this chat. So thanks again for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be your first person on the podcast and excited to talk to you about what I've been up to.
Yeah, you're the guinea pig, so I really appreciate you taking one for the team here. I do appreciate that. So maybe we can just start off by just hearing more about yourself. Like if you want to kind of give a brief introduction as to who you are, what you do, maybe fill in any missing pieces on the aforementioned. Hopefully, not cure any inaccuracies about anything that I said above, but just please, the floor is yours.
Okay, yeah. So I used to be a high school teacher. Actually about a year and a half ago, I was a high school teacher, and I made the transition to being a full-time software developer. And then I recently came on full-time with Freecodecamp. So it's just been an interesting last few years. I went back to school while I was a teacher to get a degree in software development, and then just continue to build up my portfolio and resume, and then made the transition to software development, and then it has just kind of been continuing on from there. So it's been a pretty exciting last year or so with all the new changes in my life, and I'm really enjoying just being in the software industry now.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious because I think I saw some other interviews with yourself, and you mentioned that you were in specifically special education. And I kind of want to know what were the factor, let's say, or maybe multiple factors in kind of switching from something that I would think would be a very demanding, but let's say also very rewarding job, special education, to a position that's maybe more focused on technology and software development. What were those factors?
Well, I am definitely interested in really serving other people with my life and helping people, and that kind of led me into going into teaching and special education. And I kind of realized that I can still do that, some of the same things in software development. I had always really been interested in technical topics and web development ever since high school, really. I was making websites. I actually started when I started college, I started in a computer degree. I eventually actually did video production, and then I switched to teaching and then software development. But even as a teacher, I coached a robotics team, and I did an after-school coding club, and I still did kind of some website stuff on the side, but it was very easy, simple things. I never did any really very much JavaScript or anything, and so I was always interested in programming. And I think to some degree I got a little burned out with teaching. It seemed like there's a lot of things that I was a lot of my job was forcing kids to do things that they didn't want to do, and a lot of times I didn't know if they should be doing those things either. There's just a lot of like the state has all these rules, and there's all these things that teachers really are being really forced to do. Like people make these laws that aren't really, they don't always have the experience with kids and to decide what the kids are going to have to do,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually still very interested in working with youth. So I realized if I could switch careers to something that I'm really interested and passionate about also, which is software development, and still be involved with youth and helping people. And so I'm going to be doing a robotics team again next year in a middle school that involves programming. And another thing I realized when I was a teacher, I taught in a pretty low-income school district, and I finished as a high school teacher. I actually I did elementary, middle, and high school, and a lot of the students did not have computers at home. So almost all of them had cell phones, but you can't really learn to program on a cell phone very easily.
Right.
So a lot of the kids didn't even really have opportunities to learn programming. So that's something that I hope to get more and more into, is still teaching programming to youth, but not necessarily in the school setting, kind of in a setting where the youth are choosing to go to it. And so it's still something I'm pretty passionate about.
Now, I wonder, I mean, it sounds like there was a bit of frustration from kind of teaching students things that you weren't even sure that they needed to learn. And there's also a bit of, kind of now you're sort of taking the reins a little bit, and you're saying, I know that this content is useful, so I'm going to essentially create a YouTube channel or work with Freecodecamp and provide students with the tools that they, could possibly benefit from. I wonder are there any challenges in the monolith of education, let's say, that you think maybe a symbiotic kind of relationship between, let's say, YouTube, maybe the channels that we run, some of those things, do you think that those are potentially symbiotically beneficial to the current education systems? In that, do you think that perhaps the current education systems could factor those types of strategies into their curriculum?
So you're talking about maybe using some tutorials, like YouTube tutorials, to use in the curriculum. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, did you ever try to? Well, I guess this is probably before you started your own YouTube channel, so maybe this wasn't on the forefront of your mind. But if you were to go back, do you think proposing such a combination of things would be something that would be received positively by the current education system? Or do you think it's maybe a bit too slow moving and a bit too monolithic to actually take something more modern like YouTube or Freecodecamp into its general curriculum? I guess if you could elaborate maybe on that.
Yeah, well, I do know, like with Freecodecamp, the target audience is adults, but it still can be used. I've definitely heard of people using it in high school and youth using it. Well, one thing is that, the whole school system, there's so much bureaucracy, and there's all the book publishing companies had so much power that it's really, it would be hard to get a whole free stuff into. I mean, 'cause teachers are always looking for free resources, so I think there is some room for free resources in there. One thing I was thinking about too is that at my school, a lot of there weren't very many teachers that knew very much about technology. So a lot of the teachers were older and had been kind of doing things without technology for a long time, and weren't really, I guess they weren't really interested in learning about a lot of new technology. So that was kind of a hindrance to, I guess that would be a kind of a pro and con with YouTube videos. One, I guess it could be good to get some experts that are outside the school kind of helping to teach people, teach some students. But then also, it could be a struggle to get some teachers to want to be interested in kind of showing the YouTube videos and especially showing content that they're maybe not very familiar with.
Right. So you kind of get a bit of opposition from not just, let's say the students, but also from the teachers that are a little bit out of touch and that maybe don't really see this as a legitimate resource. And I remember being younger and doing reports in Wikipedia, for instance, being kind of written off as some, you probably still can't cite Wikipedia as a legitimate source, but I think it's gotten a little bit more credibility because the things that it cites are, somewhat legitimate. So yeah, I guess maybe I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more too on when you made the transition from doing, from essentially going from this education field to a technological field, did you face, let's say, any opposition? Because I think both of the subscribers on our channels are probably coming to our content for many different reasons. Maybe they're taking a class, maybe they're shifting careers as well. Maybe they're kind of going through those same motions. And I wonder, when you went through those motions, first of all, did you tell any of your coworkers that you were planning this kind of exit strategy? And if so, did you kind of receive any opposition? And if not, did you receive any opposition from, let's say, your friends or family, or any kind of, what was the advice that you got?
Yeah, I didn't. I did tell some coworkers. I didn't tell like any of the administrators or anybody, but there's some other teachers I told that I was working on like learning software development, and for the most part, people were excited for me. I think I just happened, so I felt like I was a little burnt out, but I kind of maybe was also working with some other teachers that were burnt out. So I think that they're like, oh yeah, it's exciting that you're gonna be able to get on to this new career and get out of the school system. But I don't think that's not all teachers are like that. There's tons of teachers that love teaching, that aren't burnt out, that just love what they're doing. But as far as really everyone, even like my family, friends, people were pretty positive. I think I try new things a lot, so my wife is kind of used to me saying, "Oh, now I'm gonna try this." I'm like I mentioned, it's my third degree, kind of my third career in a pretty short period of time. And I did do a lot of things that were really helpful during that time. So I thought maybe I could talk about some of the things I did that were really helpful in my transition from being a teacher to software development.
Yeah, definitely.
So I did get a degree. It was I wrote an article about how I went through and got my degree. It was from Western Governors University, and I was able to finish pretty quickly because you were able to work at your own pace. Mm-hmm. And but there's a lot of things I think were just as important, or maybe even more important than that degree. Which, like, a key thing I think is having projects. So like I developed quite a few programming projects in like various programming languages, and that was super important. Like when I was putting on my resume, I've definitely talked to people so my school it was all online. It was pretty quick, but I talked to even people at like more traditional schools that they get through their entire computer science degree and they don't really have a lot of things that they can put on their resume as far as like coding projects that they've worked on. I mean, and like your degree, you work on little things here and there, but I would definitely recommend people trying to make full programs, full websites. One thing that was super helpful for me actually was the Freecodecamp curriculum. So I went through that in addition to my degree, and I made a lot of projects to the curriculum, and so I ended up having more Freecodecamp projects on my resume than what I made in my actual degree. And then I also reached out to people I knew that had local businesses, and I offered to like create something for their business for either, in one case it was free, another case it was like a really low amount of how much I was charging, and that really paid off for me, where I made a whole like a full Ruby on Rails app for this local church, and then I also made a iOS and Android app. It was using Ionic for this regional newspaper, and those two projects, being able to actually do work for real clients, it was super helpful when I was going through interviews to be able to talk about real work experience, basically. So even though I didn't really get paid when I went to get a job. So that's another way to kind of find projects to do, which would be just offering, especially if you can find actual real businesses, real companies, usually smaller ones, that would allow you to make a product that can be used by real people. I think that's going to be super helpful in like developing your skills.
Sure.
So,
and when you were approaching these companies to make websites for, did you just cold call them or cold email them? Did you just kind of approach them and say, or did you actually approach them with something that you had already completed, like, hey, here's something I did for you, you might be interested? What was your tactic like there?
So I actually, these two I did were people that I knew already. so it made it really easy. I didn't necessarily have to do a big cold call. I just, in both cases, I just like through talking with people, I heard about a need and I just asked if I could make something to fulfill this need for the companies, and they agreed, especially since I was offering for cheap or free. So it could be harder if you don't know people. I think another way would be to do like cold calling. Another strategy I use actually did involve kind of cold contacting people. After I had these projects and when I was getting closer to when I wanted to apply for jobs, I actually just cold emailed a bunch of different software developers and just offered to buy them coffee, and just so I could ask them questions about the software industry. And so I just through doing that, I actually met with quite a few different people, and just to kind of, and it was just like a way to jumpstart my networking in the industry.
Sure.
So, and most people I emailed were willing to meet up. So I was able to meet up with a bunch of people and just kind of, I was trying to get a job in a specific city, and you can hear about like what programming languages are popular, and like you can look at polls online, but it can be what programming languages are popular can actually be specific to a region. So just because a programming language is popular in Silicon Valley doesn't mean it's like doesn't mean there's gonna be a lot of people hiring for that where you actually want to work.
Right.
So that's what I found it helpful when I was meeting with all these people in the city I wanted to work in, and I found I was able to get actually insight about what people are looking for in that area. So it's not always going to be the case, but it seems like, at least from my experience, there's different regions will kind of be focused on different programming languages. So sometimes it can be helpful to get the inside scoop, even specific companies you want to work at. It's good to kind of talk to people to get to know about the company, and it like two of those meetings I had actually led into eventual job interviews. So that's another good benefit of just trying to network and meet up with people.
Yes.
So. Yeah, we're going to say something?
Oh, no, go on, please.
Okay. So, yeah, that was just another thing that I always try to recommend to people, just cold emailing people. And a few times the people ended up, actually, I offered to buy them coffee, and they ended up treating me to lunch. I think they figured, well, I was a teacher, and they were a software developer, so maybe they're making a little more money than me, so they're kind of nice about, getting me some lunch. So that was kind of cool too.
Yeah. So it's not even just a strategy for
primary reason.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on your motives, but yeah, if you're really in for a free lunch, they say there's no such thing. But if that is your goal, then maybe that's just start approaching people and just ask them out for coffee and just say that you do something that's like a little bit different, and maybe they'll treat you to lunch. So that's another tactic there. But that's great. That's I think it's something that people don't really. I mean, you also kind of brought up a good point about knowing the local language for kind of the region that you want to get a job in. And it's something that I really don't see a lot of good numbers for. I see kind of the Stack Overflow, like every year they do like these really extensive like graphs and sort of research on like what is the most popular language, what's the language that's trending the most. And I think those are probably biased towards Silicon Valley and some of these bigger tech hubs. But that's kind of interesting. If you're in like maybe another area that's, let's say, not Silicon Valley, and you want to know what would make you the most marketable, kind of do your research is what you're suggesting. Kind of,
Yeah.
you know, do you know of any websites or anything like? I mean, I think going and doing what you did was probably like the optimal way to go about it, because you get to kind of develop a rapport with people. You get to, I mean, arguably get free lunch and free coffee. But I mean, do you know of any websites or any other resources that are more focused on a specific area?
The only thing that comes to my head as far as kind of getting to know programming languages in an area would be meetup.com. You know, that there's on meetup.com there's often will be software meetups in the city. Like I know in the city I'm in, which is Grand Rapids, even though it's not a humongous city, there's still probably like 8 to 10 different software meetups on different programming languages. So and sometimes you can look at what kind of meetups are in the area to get an idea of what's popular in the area, and then also just going to those meetups is just another way to network with people and get to know like what's going on in the region.
Sure, and you are a fellow Michigander, as they say. So I'm also, well, I was born and raised in Michigan, but I'm currently residing in Canada. But so that's always a nice thing to know. And yeah, there's a Canadian equivalent, meetup.ca, and I found that to be pretty helpful as well. There's pretty strong communities. What would you say? I guess for the developers in Michigan, do you have any insights as to what the strongest languages or kind of the hottest technologies in the state of Michigan would currently be? Do you have any kind of a pulse on that?
Well, I guess I would mainly know the Grand Rapids area, which was where I'm at. I would say Grand Rapids is probably kind of the maybe the third biggest tech hub in Michigan. Maybe second. I think Ann Arbor would be the biggest, and then Detroit has a lot, Lansing has a lot, but then also Grand Rapids.
Right.
In Grand Rapids, the biggest thing is really .NET. So a lot of companies are using .NET, which is I don't think is super popular in Silicon Valley, but that was one of the things I found out that would be a good thing to learn. Now, I actually didn't end up learning it because I found out that there was still a lot of smaller companies using things like Ruby on Rails. So that's really what I focused on, was Ruby on Rails and JavaScript. And so they're like the bigger companies seem to use .NET, but then the smaller like consultancies and smaller shops will use maybe Ruby on Rails or Node or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Another super important thing for me was with getting a job is what I've kind of come to call developing an authority piece, which is I didn't call it this at the time, but like looking back on it, it was important to develop something that I can show people to show that I'm an expert in this topic. Oh. So in my case, it was what you mentioned at the beginning of this interview, which was the YouTube videos I made. So I ended up making an entire JavaScript tutorial course on YouTube, and so when I went to get jobs, I could kind of point to that to show them I knew what I was talking about, you know. So multiple people I was interviewing with said that that was a big thing for them, that they saw that I made this course on YouTube. So like employers, especially when they're trying to hire someone that has really not a lot of work experience, it's hard for employers to know, you know, which are going to be the good hires and which are going to be the bad hires. But if you can have something that you develop that you can point to that kind of shows that you are an expert in something, I think it really helps you get in the door some places. And the great thing, this is kind of the secret to developing this JavaScript course, is that I didn't actually know that much about JavaScript when I first started creating it. So yeah, like I was able to develop this whole course that shows that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to JavaScript, but it was the process of developing the course that made me into an expert. A lot of things, I knew all these, I knew all the I just kind of looked up all the things that you need to know about JavaScript, and then I would be making the videos as I was learning it. So I was like, well, I need so you don't actually have to know a lot about a topic to start like developing some kind of educational material about that topic.
Right.
And so especially for people that are looking for software jobs that don't have a lot of experience, you can just start making like a YouTube course about some programming language, and you don't have to know about it before you start making it, but then once you're finished with it, you'll know a lot about that programming language, and when you go to apply for a job, you can put on your resume and show that you've made this whole course, and that's going to look really good. And you don't necessarily have to do a video course. I heard about some people like making an ebook or even just like a blog. And all these things are things that anybody can do. Nobody has to give you permission to make a course on YouTube, you know?
Sure, right.
So, yeah, you don't even really have to. I mean, it's good to get a lot of views on your course, but just the fact that you've developed the course is going to look good when you go to get a job.
Right, and they say the best way to learn is to teach, right? So I think that sometimes if you really want to make sure that you understand a subject, if you really want to kind of convince yourself that you understand some topic, the best way to do that is to be able to explain it to yourself or to somebody else. And if you can do that in a clear manner, and the beautiful thing about YouTube or any other medium that you suggested is that you kind of get feedback. So if you get a lot of negative comments or dislikes, there's something wrong with your explanation. And the community, I found the YouTube community to be absolutely fantastic. A lot of the people that watch, maybe I'm getting lucky with the people that watch my channel, but they all seem to be really nice and positive and everything else. But I've seen the comment section of other videos, and that is not always the case. So I know they're out there. But the nice thing is, if you do say something that's incorrect, it's very rapidly fixed. So very
YouTube commenters are very quick to point out your mistakes. So.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it kind of it actually helped me learn. Like when I first started making videos. Now I personally like watch most YouTube videos at like 1.5 or 2 times speed. so
me too. Yeah.
Just to kind of get the content as quick as possible, especially if it's like a tutorial or something like that. And so when I first started making the videos, I was like, I like fast videos. How about I speed up the video before I even post the video? So I would speed them up to like 1.3 times speed. But then I quickly realized that not everyone likes that. And in fact, there's tons of people that are like English language learners or people in other countries. I didn't even really consider when I was first starting to make videos that not everyone has English as their first language, and having it sped up actually just makes it a lot harder. So that was just one example of like once you start putting out there, you kind of learn things, and also when you do get negative feedback, sometimes you can kind of turn it around for good. I actually tried something kind of unique with my resume, where for like maybe 3/4 of the resume were like a normal resumes, like talking about all the good things that I've done. But then like I had a section at the end called bad references, and I put 2 different critical comments about me. They were both from like online. Like one comment was like a comment that a critical YouTube comment.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Like I can't understand any of these videos or something like that. And then another was a comment from someone that left like one of the technical articles I wrote, like a negative comment on there, and then I linked to like the original comments on the resume. So and actually multiple people I had applied to. Mentioned that like made my resume stand out, that I would have like a bad references section. So
interesting. Okay, so yeah, you were talking about the bad references section and how that was actually kind of an interesting thing that makes your resume stand out.
Yeah. So I definitely think that you should. Well, if you can do anything to make your resume stand out, and so just having that was just something that people would see. Oh, this guy is must be kind of confident if he's putting these references. And my hope was that I thought that the negative comments were unwarranted. so my hope is that maybe if they click the link, like one was on a YouTube video, they would see, well, maybe this video wasn't actually as bad as this YouTube commenter was saying.
Right, and they'll kind of give you the benefit of a doubt, and they'll say like, oh, this guy's actually like pretty resilient, and he takes criticism really well, and they'll kind of they'll form it into a positive. Now, just to play devil's advocate a little bit though, like when you do that, that's a ballsy move, right? I mean, that's quite a move that could backfire. And I'll even backstep a little bit and say that when you put out content, either in the form of a book or a YouTube channel, I mean, if you don't know what you're talking about and you're putting out information out there, that can also backfire too. What would you say is kind of the balance? There's obviously a balance, and I think everyone sort of comes up with different equations in their head as to what that balance is, as to when you put yourself up there and when you actually become less of a perfectionist or more of a perfectionist. I guess what is how do you not sabotage yourself?
Well, I will say that I'm kind of on the perfectionist side, where all of my videos took a really long time to create. Like even short videos, I would spend so much time like editing out all my ums and my pauses and making all these changes. But even after you make it, I have this tutorial. It's a tic-tac-toe tutorial, and it ended up getting, I think it's been pretty. It's like right now it has like 40,000 views, so it's kind of popular. But there's a few like really key mistakes that I made. So one bad part about YouTube is that you can't really change the video after you put it up.
Right.
So you can always delete it and upload it again, but then you don't have all the previous views. So every little bit, maybe every few weeks, someone will point out the same mistake again in the comment section. They didn't bother to see it was already pointed out all these times. Like, oh, yeah, I know I did that wrong. It's already up there. I can't do anything about it now. So just kind of have to, I guess, you kind of have to be okay with it to some degree, that you're going to have, anytime content out be mistakes, and people are definitely going to notice them. So you just have to kind of, I guess, be resilient and kind of have some sort of confidence, or your worth can't be just based on what you're putting out there. You have to have some other source of worth for yourself, because there's definitely going to be a lot of negative things that people throw to you.
That's right. Yeah, it makes sure that you have a very thick skin, which is good, and also kind of really like when you actually do need to, let's say, put your feet in the fire and actually go and explain these concepts to, let's say, a job prospect or something like that. You hopefully will have learned a lot from your presentation style and the way that you convey yourself and everything like that. You've kind of learned a lot about yourself in doing these videos, and optimistically, the negative feedback, if you take criticism well, which it sounds like you do, which is good, then that works in your favor, which is great.
And I would say to anybody thinking about whether they want to start putting out content, or whether it's a video tutorial or maybe an article or a blog, or I would say just do it, because you're never going to know everything. I think it's always good to just start putting out content out there, even when you're not an expert, because you can learn so much doing it, and then one thing will lead to another. I first started posting videos on my personal YouTube channel, but and not too long, Quincy Larson, who runs Freecodecamp, found out about it, and he actually and I said that had 100 subscribers to go to this other channel that had, I think at the time, 75,000 subscribers or 100,000 subscribers. So then I started getting more and more involved with Freecodecamp and posting more videos on there. And then from there, that's when Manning Publications saw my videos on Freecodecamp, and that's when they kind of reached out to me about developing a video course for Manning Publications, which was a course I would get paid for instead of just doing volunteering. and then just continuing to get more and more involved in Freecodecamp. Now I'm actually working for Freecodecamp, and it all started with just me posting YouTube videos to a channel that had 0 subscribers, and it just kind of grew from there.
It's weird when you really think about it, right? I mean, like, I think it's just getting started. There's so many people that, I mean, to play the reverse of devil's advocate now, I think that there's so many people that essentially take perfectionism too far, and like you said, you're never going to know everything. You really just you need to put yourself out there at some point, and if you don't, you're going to essentially prevent yourself from growing, and that is essentially going to not serve you very well. So I think at some point you really need to just kind of put yourself out there like you did. And it seems like, it's odd beginnings, right? I mean, how did you think that you would have, been where you are now from just starting a few YouTube videos on your channel? I mean, it's kind of, really kind of snowballed quite a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So go on. Yeah.
Just put out content. That's a big advice. Just start putting out content, any sort of learning resource you can put out there. I mean, even if it's not everyone's gonna get asked to post to this really popular YouTube channel, but there's gonna be some sort of benefit to anybody that starts posting content. I think it's gonna pay some sort of dividend.
Absolutely. And I mean, this could also just be from a personal reward. Obviously, you're someone who's passionate about teaching, and just knowing that you're out there kind of helping people improve their own lives through learning software development, I think that's reward in itself. So that's great. One thing I kind of wanted to, I know we're kind of getting close to the end of our discussion. So I guess, could you talk a little bit more about Freecodecamp and your involvement there?
Yeah. So for people that don't know, Freecodecamp is it encompasses a lot of different things, but the main platform is this learning platform where anybody can learn to code. Mm-hmm. So there's a full curriculum with specifically focusing on web development, and both front end and back end, that anybody can get on there for free and go through this whole curriculum and become a web developer. And there's been a lot of people that have gotten jobs after going through the Freecodecamp curriculum. It's a completely free curriculum, and there's a lot of supplementary resources, like we have the YouTube channel, which I'm very involved with, mm-hmm. and then there's also we post a lot of technical articles. Currently, we're posting a lot of technical articles on Medium, so that can kind of help supplement your education, and it's great because anybody can get on it. We're a nonprofit organization that kind of makes us stand apart from other companies like Code Academy or any other company like that, where eventually they want you to start paying some money, but we're able to do it all through like donors, almost similar to how Wikipedia funds themselves. Just small individual donors kind of make it so everyone can learn to code for free.
Yeah, that's I like that. I subscribe to that business model. I think that's great that you're doing that from kind of a Wikipedia philosophy standpoint. So at the time, like, the focus of Freecodecamp, it seems like it's primarily like web dev, kind of full stack stuff. Is there other plans to kind of broaden the language horizon into other, let's say, even non-web courses, computer science courses? Is there sort of like a trajectory going forward?
Yeah, so eventually we're going to add more and more stuff like that. We just kind of do a little bit at a time, and you can already learn about some stuff that we have, things that are kind of outside the core curriculum. Like there's a Freecodecamp guide, which is just guide.freecodecamp.org. And there's articles on the Freecodecamp guide about a lot of different other programming languages. And then there's obviously the YouTube channel. We post videos about other programming languages. And then eventually there are plans to add more things to the core curriculum. But we're just doing a little bit at a time. And it's always going to be mainly volunteer driven. So that's another great thing, is that it's an open source community. So a lot of the curriculum has been developed by volunteers. A lot of the articles, the YouTube videos. So yeah, we're definitely always looking for more volunteers, and it really kind of made me think about something when it comes to trying to put content out there. We're always looking for more video tutorials for the YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. So if anybody wanted to start maybe trying to get get some content out there, some tutorials, you can always submit them to the YouTube channel. You can actually just email me. It's beau@freecodecamp.org. It's spelled BEAU is how you spell my first name, at freecodecamp.org. You can submit videos about potentially getting on the channel. Also, with the Medium publication, you can submit articles to that and get your technical articles on there. So those are just two ways you can start kind of developing a little authority piece, like I was saying, that you can point to when you go to get a job.
Right. Excellent. And I will make sure that I put both of those, the guide link, Freecodecamp, and also your email address in the show notes, just so people have access to that for sure. And then I know we're kind of getting close to the time that we're ending. So one of the things that I guess I'd like to end with, I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, who has a lot of different podcasts and different books, and he tends to end his interviews with a series of questions. So one of the I have 3 questions here. We can just start with one of them, and if that's the end of the time, that's the end of the time. That's okay. The questions that I picked have something to do somewhat, I think, with kind of your own journey, your own trajectory from kind of going from a non-tech field to a tech field. So I guess the first one, it's also kind of like a bit nebulous and a bit not related to that either as well. Question is, what is the book or books you've given most as a gift, and why? And or what are the 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life? So hat tip to Tim Ferriss on that one.
I guess one thing that kind of relates to what we were just talking about was the book Linchpin by Seth Godin.
Seth Godin, yeah.
Reading that book, he talks a lot about putting content out into the world, and that was one of the inspirations of starting to post my YouTube videos to begin with. So that was like kind of inspired a lot of things that came after that. So I would definitely recommend that book, Linchpin.
Okay, excellent. And what can we expect from Beau going forward?
You mentioned at the beginning, I have this course about algorithms from Manning Publications, and I'm currently developing a course on deep learning, so you can kind of look for that. But I love working for Freecodecamp. I plan to just continuing to help out and build up the curriculum and build up anywhere I can with Freecodecamp.
Okay, and I guess where can people find out more about you?
My personal website is carnes.cc. It's just CARNES.cc, and you can find out more information about me there.
Great. I will be sure to put that in the show notes as well. And I guess, again, being mindful of your time. Thank you again for taking the time to appear on my channel. I really appreciate that. All the links and everything like that, I will make sure to put in the show notes, and I'll try to put a series of timestamps to various parts of the discussion, so that way people can kind of jump around with respect to certain topics. And I think that's pretty much where we're going to end it. So thank you again.
Well, yeah, thanks. It was great being on the podcast, and I don't know what I would have put on a billboard, so I'm glad you didn't ask me about what phrase I put on a billboard.
No. Well, that is a classic Tim Ferriss question. So maybe next time, think of a good answer for that one. And or if I appear on the Beau Carnes podcast, then I'll try to have a good answer. Although that's a tough one. That's a really good question. So
well, there is a Freecodecamp podcast, so that's another thing Freecodecamp has that people can check out.
Oh, cool.
More technical information and grow in their career.
Nice. Well, I will put that link as well in the show notes, and I appreciate you being the guinea pig for this experiment. So thank you so much, Beau. It was really a pleasure.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.
See ya.